workshop to order. Roll call, please.
Miranda,
Here.
Maniscalco,
Here.
Artek, here, Young, here, Viera,
Here.
Carlton,
Here.
Glendon,
Here.
we have a physical form.
Thank you.
People on Monday.
Monday. Okay, so we are going to, I guess it was noticed, we're gonna open this up to public comments, eh?
Yeah,
Okay, it says right at roll call on the.
it talks about public comment, but it didn't say that's what it is.
Okay. It is, so I was like, that's interesting. Okay, so we're doing this, to set the table a little bit. We're doing this special hub workshop because we have a aggressive schedule to accomplish this and to be able to give the committee that we formed adequate time to really work through the issues. The objective of this is to ensure that we've covered all the information that our attorney needs to have the scope and the details to create a final resolution by.
It has to be put into the clerk's office by Thursday to show up on the following agenda on the 20th.
So we're not leaving this meeting until we give him all the information he needs to create that resolution. Okay, and I think on that note, I think it's pretty much, I want to emphasize that one, thanks to those of you that were on the charter review commission last time, we have recreated the way the city charter is doing, the city of Tampa is doing this. So this is a first time ever, as you all are aware, of how the charter review commission is going to be establishing and, the membership and how. So while we can learn from past procedures, this is the first time, so I wouldn't necessarily stick with the paradigms of what happened in the past or what necessarily has to be carried forward to this process. So again, when you look back, we're maybe some lessons learned or some guidance, but I think because of this is a totally new procedure, the appointments are going to be very different. And I think that's we'll have to work, we're going to work like we get majority of this, the mayor gets to. So everything is a little bit different this time. I think generally, I think we probably should start, unless somebody wants to discuss, I think we should start with what the scope of the assignment. We already know by charter that we have to appoint the folks. It provides a little bit of, I don't know if anybody has the memo that I have put out.
Here, I have it here, if anybody who doesn't have it, okay, let's pass these around. This is where you're gonna be.
Mr. Chair, why don't we ask Marty what questions he needs answered and then.
Okay.
By the way, Kapesky is on her way down. She just had a meeting back up, so she's a little bit late. Sure.
You have a copy?
You have a copy.
I also sent out, again, my apologies for the you have that?
Yeah.
I'll take it. Good job. What I did in anticipation of having to do the resolution is I started to craft that. I don't know whether everybody has one of these, but certainly that is going to be, frankly, from my perspective, between that and the chair's memorandum, which has the timeline, that's really going to be the roadmap. The other thing that I'd like to do to make sure everybody has in front of them is make sure everybody has a copy of the ordinance that you passed in September that established this board. Because what that does is that really tracks section 1010 of the charter as to what is required by the charter. And what is required by the charter is set forth in this ordinance, but there's a lot of things that had not been. And what I have here is, I have a request to pass out resolution number 217-588, which is actually the resolution, because it was done by resolution initially. In 2017, and proposed ordinance, which charter now requires it be established by charter. And I sort of, very leftovers of what I.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that. I
588.
588. So my suggestion to council is to start with what I prepared, the preparation of crafting the resolution, and the things that are there are objectives of the Charter Review Commission, the appointment and composition of the Charter Review Commission, qualifications for membership, the term of the membership, the duty of the Charter Review Commission, and administrative support. And everything there is up for discussion, up for debate, up for grabs. The words in parentheses that I underline are decision points where I've given you choices or just said, fill in the list. Things that require direction in order for me to finalize and prepare for you for your consideration, a draft to bring back in next on 20th of November. So your opportunity to still make changes on the 20th of November will still be in front of you. You'll be able to take public comment, see the draft at the time, and then you'll be able to discuss it further if you wish.
So let's look at the first item, Councilwoman Terry.
To go to the point of the first item, I was the one that actually asked for the old one from resolution 2017. So if you actually look at the second page of that, of the 2017 resolution, that's 588. You look at the second page on B, that is what the last Charter Review Commission was tasked at looking at. Not all of that will be relevant, but I thought that would be a good level setter of what we were asked to look at. Some of it no longer that, but it's just a good basis because I know Councilman Carlson passed out his suggestions, but I thought just looking at what we did before.
Two points. One, I know that the city, via memo that we received from, and I see Ms. Zellman is in the audience. The city is working on Scrivener and housekeeping items to submit to us, which I think that's good, that we can take that off of the burden of the committee so they can deal with substantive things. But beyond that, is there any reason why we're limiting the scope to just, instead of just the charter, policy issues for the charter?
I never, can I ask, this is the list that I sent by email that we're passing. And I don't think we should limit it to that, but just say some questions that they could ask. And that's the intent of my questions. These are questions that I've asked, the public has asked. And so my recommendation, especially in Marty's draft, is that we add another section just to say some questions that potentially answer. And then we could,
So I mean,
what we think those questions
but
should be.
as far, I concur with your, submitting questions, just like I have those points that I want to submit as well. And I think we all will. But is it for the scope of, for the objective of this resolution that Marty's preparing, can we agree by consensus that the scope of the review may include another, it's not that, it's basically scope is the city of Tampa charter?
Yes, I agree. But we have a question. Did you hear me, Marty? I think for the questions that we're going to ask, like the ones that I put in, I think we ought to put a separate section in your list that says questions that could be pondered or asked by the commission.
Okay, well, the way it was phrased, at least in 2017, is the scope and the way the city council at that time addressed it was in objectives of the Charter Review Commission, letter B. The scope of review may include, but is not limited to the list of those things you specifically want them to look at. You could have a catch-all that started with the catch-all.
So just making sure that we don't, they emphasis, they're not limited by.
No, but again, having been on that
Right.
committee, it was helpful to have some guidance in terms of what direction, because the people we're going to appoint to this are not necessarily people who watch every city council meeting or kind of know what the issues that we have wrestled with. Because if you have suggestions, it'd be nice to know what they are, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about here.
So what we talked about, so like number one here is resolving conflicts with state law and resolving internal conflicts, removing gender bias language.
Yeah, and all of that.
All that stuff could be housekeeping, which the staff is actually kind of working on. So that's 1 through 4, 1 through 10. Councilman Carlson.
As long as the changes are not substantive, like adding he, she instead of he is just like a,
I'm sorry.
but if it's something that would actually change the meaning of it, then we ought to put a different category.
Would you say that resolving conflicts with state law is bureaucratic and?
Yeah.
But that's, yes,
As
that's.
long as it doesn't go, the recommendation doesn't go.
Let me take a, let me direct your attention to page 3, what I think today is. Because I just want to talk this about scope, so let me show you where.
Hold on, do you have a question, Councilman Marquardt?
Well, no, I was just gonna say that, I mean, again, before any of this would possibly go to voters, it has to come to us anyway. So even like whatever the city staff does say, it's gonna have to be approved by us anyway. So I'm not concerned about that.
Well,
That's it.
well, on that point, did you all have check-in meetings with the entire full council during this process?
No.
No. Councilmember,
I'm just wondering, since we're talking about votes and all this, and I'm just thinking back, how many times, I don't recall ever the people who we appointed not reporting to us or saying 4 or 5 different times what they talk about the charter. That's what I'm saying. So, I mean.
I had no
that's-
idea.
I mean, you know, that's a point to me.
Well-
They should report.
I took the space of someone who didn't show up for meetings, so I don't even know who ended up appointing that person, because I never knew.
Mr. Shelley,
Yeah, just to address the scope. Page 3 under administrative.
On your,
On mine, yeah, on the one that stated, for the workshop today. And I also included this in the material that I sent out to you in the email last night, and of course, apologies for that, but I wanted to make sure that I was able to get some form that I could get this to you. I sent you two emails that I was sent to you for the month of October by the city attorney, and she's here to obviously speak for office. But B says suggestions for non-substantive housekeeping. It's not in the scope because this is not, at least the way I heard the consensus, this is not in the scope of the committee. It's being taken out of the scope of the committee because suggestions for non-substantive housekeeping changes to the charter will be provided by the city attorney to the city council for its consideration. And I put in those decision points, if you want to put it in there, such as, or including, and then list if you want to. But the point is that is not in the scope. And I did not.
Can I ask Ms. Selman a quick question?
Yes, please.
When do you think city staff would have a final product of proposed administrative, non-substantive changes?
We could probably get it done within the month.
Awesome.
oh, wow.
Okay,
I don't expect it to be extensive. A lot of the problems we have with the charter, frankly, relate to part B, which is the special laws, local special acts that do. And we actually have to go to local legislation to get those changed.
And that might be something the council takes up to talk about, how you're going to be able to get that done.
With a lot of everything has been, I don't expect to have it.
so what I'm hearing is that the administration, really in this process, can present all those changes to council in a timely way as city attorney.
City,
City attorney.
the legal department, the attorney, not the administrator. The administration, brother.
Okay, well, I mean, I look, I got you. So the city attorney and the legal staff will be able to, in a very timely way, early on in this process, have the proposed administrative type of housekeeping changes to us to review. And then that could alleviate the burden of the charter review committee, Councilman Garland.
I recommend you could make a motion, or I can make a motion, that Marty create another section of this called scope. And the first paragraph A would have the description of what you said, which is just to review the charter, make recommendations in generic. And then B would be this, pull this out, that they would review. I think they should review whatever their city attorney recommends, just so they can put it through long discussions and come back to us. And then C, B, and potentially help answer these questions. And and then just have council's questions there. So it would be scope A, B, and C. But the third one is not mandatory. It's just potentially answering those.
I think I can agree with that, if we said, instead of just not list the questions, but I think, because I think we need to be fluid, we'd be able, we should, well, I think we should be able throughout this process, be able to submit our, I don't know if we need to have a deadline on us when we submit our, like, so say I have an appointee, and we should be able to give that person a list of concern, and whenever, hopefully it's timely enough for them to actually deal with it. But we need to be able to stay dynamic.
This was really important last time. This list here.
Yeah.
Because we started, if you look, like number 10, clarification of city council authority hires on staff. 11, reviewing whether city departments should report to council in the event of departure from anticipated. And this is the thing that we're still dealing with now because we didn't finish it. Clarification to which the administration is obligated to spend funds. Mayor, number 15, mayor and council roles generally. 14, mayor and council roles in the budget process. As we started discussing these things, the city attorney at the time, which was not this one, came running downstairs, even though he's not a part of the process, and shouted at me and said, "You're going to change the strong mayor form of government." I said, "No, I'm just reading off these questions right here." I said, "My point is."
Let's be clear though, Councilman Carlson, the charter's under review. I mean, everything's up
But
to
my
date.
point is that as somebody who's been involved in a lot of things, having the city attorney come down and threaten us like that was very disruptive to the process. And because I had the weight of council had voted on these things, it was very helpful to be able to push back against it.
So can we have a list that is not, it's not closed, like a list that,
Yeah, what I was saying is that, and we could even make it to potentially review these, not mandatory.
Councilwoman Carson?
The problem is, this is a resolution. A resolution is not fluid. So I think what we're asking, if you want to keep it fluid, Mr. Schultz, how do we keep it fluid? Because we're here because he has to write the resolutions.
Point taken.
Well, is there anything on this list? How would you phrase it? Do you want, when you say the scope of the entire charter, do you want just a generic?
That's not our question. Our question is,
How do you-
how do we keep it fluid?
Well, here's the question.
So council has input. How do we keep that
Well,
input?
first of all, you have an appointee. That is first of all, you have an appointee, that's number one.
Right.
And it's your relationship with your appointee is what you created to be. That's number one. Number two is that to what degree of oversight, looking over the shoulder, do you want to impose on this committee? In other words, are you ultimately, what impact do you want to have on, what impact do you want as a body to have on their recommendations? Because ultimately, if you look at the timeline, which we're gonna have to go back to, what ultimately happens is I'm going to just make it clear for the record and for everybody to know, this is called the City of Tampa Charter Review Advisory Commission. This is not like Hillsborough County. In Hillsborough County, that commission has a tremendous amount of power because it does not have to get the blessing of the county commission before it goes directly on the ballot. This does not. This is purely advisory. They make recommendations. The recommendations have to be, according to this timeline, brought to you by September of next year. And then you have to decide whether you want to workshop it, whether you want to do whatever you want. You give direction to the attorney who's going to be appointed to come back with the language. You're going to have to review the language, see if that meets with your approval, put it on for 2 readings and public comment. So that's the whole process.
Okay, pause right there. Councilman Maniscalco.
So when I appointed my appointee to the last commission, we never communicated. He had free reign, and I think that's how it should be, because they discuss the ideas amongst themselves as they did, and then it came to council, us as the oversight. It was public, and then we moved forward to put certain things on the ballot. So in my opinion, and what I want to do, whoever my appointee is, let that person have free reign. number one. Freedom of thought. Whoever we appoint, we trust. My appointee is very good, very detail oriented, and I never communicated with that person. I don't, when you say oversight, I trust whomever I appoint, whether I agree with them or not, that's the process here, I mean, you
But
put
it
what
wouldn't,
is on the
you wouldn't
table.
restrict us if I wanted to, I mean, what you're saying is your individual decision about your appointee, but it wouldn't mean that if I wanted to micromanage shocking, the person that I had appointed, it wouldn't restrict me from doing that. Councilman Carlson and Councilwoman Herzog.
Yeah, I agree with that philosophy, not only because it gave me free reign, but it also protected him from whatever I recommend. But
Oh, you were his appointee?
yeah, I was his appointee, so you didn't get in trouble.
Councilwoman Herzog.
No, can I finish?
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I think we have to, I don't want to micromanage mine, I don't micromanage any of mine, I don't guide them or talk to them. If we hire, or we appoint smart people, we trust them to do whatever they're gonna do. I wanna know what their thoughts are. If they're gonna be proxies for us, then we may as well not have a committee and just do it ourselves, and that we're required to now by charter. But I think what we ought to do is give them some guidelines like this, not these guidelines. One of the things we did last time, which was very time consuming, is we went paragraph by paragraph through the charter. It's better to give them some general guidelines. And if out of my list, you all don't pick any of them, I'll give this to my appointee and then I'll let that person decide what they want to do. But if there's anything in here you think is something that we have a question of, I think we ought to try to put some questions in here.
Councilwoman Herzog and Councilman Brandon.
Well, and I disagree, because anyone I appoint to a committee of any kind, I'm in contact with, because that's like, they're my ears and eyes, and so I don't have to, but I want to know what they're talking about. I mean, I have an interest in it. Not having had anybody where I just say, you should go do this, but we end up having good discussions. And so for me personally, I will have continued communication with my appointee. But I do agree with Councilmember Carlson. The reason we had to go sentence by sentence was because it hadn't been looked at since 1974. And now we don't have that problem anymore. It's not a document that hasn't been reviewed in 40 years. I mean, to the best of our ability, did go through and change all the he's to theys. We did those types of things. We did the housekeeping. We changed the department heads. We don't have to do any of that anymore, the department names. But further to the point of, I think, I don't want to have to watch all of them, and that's why I want to communicate with my person, but also to talk about some of these ideas. And I think we each are choosing someone who we know has an interest and who's really in depth, and is good at these types of, I mean, the charter's only 11 pages. It's not a heavy document, so.
And that's crazy too, when you realize how short.
It is, but to Councilmember Carlson's point, a lot of the stuff, when I was reviewing it this morning, are still questions. No, there's still issues. I mean, not all of them. The number 12, clarification of the degree to which the administration is obligated to spend allocated funds. It's something that we have fought over in these last few years.
Yeah, I don't know if y'all remember those changes I submitted, which I don't think I have a copy of here. I think I had your resolution up here yet. Do you have a copy of the ones that I had submitted? Any chance?
Probably.
But I mean, it covers that issue. Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. Well, I'm sorry, Councilman Renner.
So I just want to say that I appointed someone last time, I didn't give any direction to anything regarding charter review. Did I speak to that person occasionally? Yes, but it was not directly on any subject regarding to what I appointed that person for. If that person tell me something, when I thought about it, I gave my opinion, that was it.
See, I can envision this, Councilman, I can envision this in that, so your questions you submitted, the items that I'm gonna submit, and maybe I haven't even thought of yet that I wanna submit, that I would throw them in the pot, and my expectation of this committee is they would vet them out, and they either accept, reject, or change. But I think we should all have the ability to have our voices heard by the whole committee.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, so that's how I kind of envision
Can we
this.
just say C in that scope, we could say C, city council will each city council member will supply a list of possible questions
They want that in that.
and then we can always add that, and then they can go through and decide which ones they want.
So that was what we're doing today.
That's what I thought you were doing today at some point in time.
But do you think today was the
Well,
deadline?
here's my question. Here's my question. If ultimately, if there are certain things city council members want them to discuss, then it can be done through your appointee. If it's things that city council as a body wants to discuss, then you can communicate them through motion or resolution. Further down, another resolution or something like that. What I'm concerned about, council, is that if during the whole course of however they structure their meetings, you keep throwing things into the mix, the city council will then in effect co-opt the agenda of that committee.
Wouldn't you say that we should have an opportunity to put into their pot, let's say up to May 1st? So if we have something on May 1st, if the deadline, no new, city council is going to say, if you have an idea, you have to May 1st to throw it into their hopper.
Here's
You think so? So they have until
I think
October.
it's too late to.
let me see if I could.
What would be a date that's not too late?
Well, here's my question to you, Mark. My question to you is, you're throwing things out that are ultimately going to have to go through this whole process by that board to ultimately come back to council, which will either vote up or down, which you could do at any time. Because when the time comes for you to put something on the ballot, if they don't take it up, and you want them to take it up through even your appointee, that you can get it to the council when it reviews it, to put it on the ballot, and it gets a sufficient number, and it survives a potential mayoral veto, then it'll get on the ballot irrespective of what this advisory board says.
So, okay, so let's,
If I may,
Councilman Bureau.
I don't request to speak as stale when my issues passed, but I was gonna say, that if I may, for this, I mean, look, we're talking about like what our aspirations are for our appointee and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the agenda is a resolution to establish the goals, objectives, and scope for the city of Tampa. Let's hit that, right? I mean, our governing philosophy, I appointed last time Michael Stevens, who I had all the world's confidence in. He's a wonderful person.
you know, where did he go? We don't know.
I stick credit, right? Obviously, I'm joking. And God knows he has his hands full this week, but yeah, we're gonna appoint good people that we have confidence. Everyone has a different philosophy on it, cool. The person I appoint, I mean, last time there were one or two core issues that I said, look, this is how I feel about it. You feel differently, let me know. I trust you. That's it. Go forth and conquer. But you know, we can do this today with a resolution and just do it. We don't need to be here for 4 hours.
Can't we cover this with the scope and scale? I said the charter's open. The scope with a date that with input from individual members of Tampa City Council no later than March 1st.
March 2nd, if you want to line it up with the election.
March 2nd.
Whatever.
First of all, can we, to his point, to move this along, can we agree to add an intersection that's the scope, and then would have just a generic scope that is to, a sentence that says it's to modify update the charter, and then B would be any of the recommendations to review any recommendations of the city attorney, and then C would be to look at a list of questions that would be supplied by city council at some point in the future.
No later than
Whatever, but if we simply get a
March 2nd.
are we taking motions or not?
I mean, I agree with you. I just think, I guess maybe
Second, a question for discussion.
yeah, because so we have a motion, Councilman Carl, second, Councilman, Richard, we don't, it's a workshop.
Yeah, because we have to. Request a direction to staff. I mean, give me a consensus.
Well, I just feel that I'm not comfortable saying today was the deadline for me to submit suggestions for changes to the charter. I mean, I wanted an opportunity to be able to have more time. That's why Councilman.
I'm not under the impression that we're gonna do anything, but make today about discussion. Something great.
If you could just tell me.
Having said this, we've been here 30-some minutes. We haven't even settled one item.
We'll get there.
This is a big one though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have an idea. Why don't we? Why don't we get to the point, so we have to nominate someone And once we nominate someone and once we have your choice of person, why don't you give us a month or two to discuss with that person what we're trying to accomplish? And then once that's done, have the list.
Your
Well, that gives us Mark first, too, but this gives us.
just if I can, Councilor Joe. You're talking about the scope. What I need is, my recommendation is you go down what I have decided is going to be in here unless you tell me otherwise. Except for those things that don't say like list. The scope of review may include, but is not limited to. I can just take out the scope of review is and just throw in something very generic. And if that's acceptable to council,
I think that's the motion that I'm trying to make, right?
Yeah.
Is that scope is a separate, it's a separate section, just like.
then okay, then
objectives.
is there a consensus that I take out scope from that and create a separate section?
And then the
I don't
scope.
Well, I know, I think the scope of review has to, the scope,
Scope has to be
the
here.
scope has to be there, so the charter, example charter.
And
You
We
need
can change that to objectives and scope. You want to put that in there because.
the scope of review is the Tampa City charter, the city of Tampa charter.
no, the scope of review is, and to go to Councilman Carlson's point, so say these were actually labeled instead of just having headings, say it was 1, 2, 3.
Okay,
Then it would be, the scope of review would encompass whatever, number 9. And then, scope, whatever you want to call that, scope of review.
The scope shouldn't be in the objectives anyway.
okay.
It's a
So let me just say a new section of scope and we'll come up
Well,
with
but
something.
the objective should be to review the scope. And then,
And have, I guess if you're right, it's redundant. I mean, it's all in the name of the chart, it's the charter review commission. So
yeah,
that's
that's.
redundant. So let's just line that through.
But can we get consensus to have a separate section called scope, and then A would be just something like C here, just to describe that we're reviewing the charter. B is that they'll review the recommendations of city attorney. And C would be recommendations, review questions from city council to be supplied by whatever day.
March 2nd, 2025, 2026.
Does anybody disagree with that?
I think that's, I agree.
I think it's reasonable. The only thing is the date. Where is the? We had a.
That's Alan's memo.
Okay, okay, I see. Sorry, there's so much paper,
Don't.
Yeah,
I think March works. You look at that.
But they're starting in January, what between then and January?
but that's what I'm saying.
They can tackle it.
We should have the questions by January.
You should have a questions by January.
That way, if we appoint,
And I'm gonna tell you why.
if we're appointing our people now, we don't have to go through a process to appoint our people.
Okay.
We're just appointing our people.
Well, there is a process for what.
Well,
And it's in
The alternative, and the alternative.
It's in the resolution. The thing is, you are also engaging a facilitator to control this process. If
I still think we have until January, that gives us a month and a
I
half.
think
Yes.
it's December 19th,
Why December 19th?
just so we have it done before.
Last meeting before the holiday.
Well, the first meeting in January.
I think the first meeting in January is better because it gives us a chance over that break to meet with that person, to really talk about it, to kind of get some ideas about what they are envisioning and we're envisioning.
So do we have consensus on that?
Yeah.
Marty, did you capture that?
First meeting in January.
Meeting in January, what Bill said, the first one.
See what the date is. The first meeting in January is January 8th.
Yeah, there you go.
So now to Alan's timeline to the.
I was gonna say, I think we need to look at the timeline.
You have to look at the timeline.
Yeah. Is there anybody that has an issue with the time? Well, obviously the November 6th for the TNI, which we're talking, saying we started initiating that conversation. But we're on the list. Anybody have any issues with what you see on this timeline?
I have a question.
Councilman?
Well, only because the true bane of our resistance last time was social media communication. I mean, that was a huge issue.
Yeah.
Not only that, public comment, which we allowed at the beginning of every one, we just did not have any participation. I mean, it was very
Well,
difficult.
that's when we did this, the rest of the people to submit web, submissions on the web, and so you guys have.
So will there be virtual public comment?
We haven't gotten public comment yet. There's a place for it. It's down there.
Oh, okay, well then I will reserve my
But I
questions.
would say to direct your attention to page 3, administrative support, C says the city council We'll coordinate with T and put this in the resolution. We'll coordinate with T and I and marketing communications on creating the City of Tampa Charter Review Advisory Commission webpage, a public comments submission web form that is also going to public comment. And social media.
The only thing I would change is to say the city council chair, because I believe that's Alan's job.
City Council Chair.
Sam, that's your job.
Well, I mean, we can all do it, and it is,
I agree.
Design website by committee.
I mean, I guess I kind of just, yeah, figured that's what it was.
yeah, but that would be, well, that's question.
And if I may,
That's gonna be. your-
yeah, and just looking at these dates, some of these dates in terms of first reading the ordinance, I will be out very likely of city council by then, so we would have to move on a replacement for them. I don't think anybody's contacted you guys on those. I'm just being very sarcastic. No, but, for my replacement, but yeah, so
When are you out?
What is
November of 26.
what is the date? You have a date?
It would be, if this is politics, if
Knock on that wood.
I know, right? I think the law is that I need to leave, when I would take office in the seat that I have filed for. And win or lose, that would be November, because in State House, when the president's filed for, and I don't need president's qualifier, I can file for. I would take office, should I win, when that person wins. So that's November of 2026, just to be mindful of that. I would-
First Tuesday in November, whatever.
Well, but quite honestly, at that point, we're kind of past the point of no return anyway.
Yeah, I just say because there's some votes, just in case if there's anything.
I mean, there's votes, but it's gonna be a.
If you don't-
Smile.
But that would be 2 weeks, just like mine was before no one. It would be a very,
Somebody could.
it would be very fast.
That's all, just to get somebody in, that's all.
And of course, this timeline starts with the end on March 2nd, 2027. We'll have to work backward. Be able to make sure that we.
Which is what we did when we created the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I think the timeline.
So that's, so is there a consensus, with the exception from this day forward? November 20th, to pick up from November 20th, that everything else from that point forward seems to work well, we're changing the line about the, chair will work with T and I.
Well, also, I think we should put that January 8th date in.
Yeah.
the timeline.
We can insert that in.
Yes, January 8th. For the purpose of the January 8th date again.
It's a resolution for
Council input into the proposed changes to.
the scope.
It would be an addendum to the resolution.
Correct. So, yeah, or, yeah, an addendum to the resolution by January 8th. Yeah,
As defined in the scope section.
yeah.
So that's when you want my idea.
Yeah, that's the marketing thing.
Thank you.
Well, that's a good change.
So I think that's, I think that resolves the issue of scope then.
Yeah.
But there's one more, something on, so not scope related, but on October 1st, it says, determine proposed ballot questions to be submitted. I believe you said that we are going to have the attorney that we select write those questions, correct?
Say it again, Council.
We are having the person, we're not using city paid attorneys. We're choosing a separate attorney to sit and see, last time we did not. And so the city attorneys wrote the questions. So what we're saying is the independent attorney will be writing the questions. I just wanted to clarify that.
Correct, that is my understanding.
That's all. I wanted to know.
So that's a city council review of recommendations, which is going to come to you, by the way. Get to this in the resolution draft. City council will do some that comes to you about the end of October, the last meeting, the last meeting in September. And on October 1st, you will review that. And then you determine the ballot question to be submitted, and then you directly draft ordinance setting forth ballot language, but that would be directing the attorney.
Yes.
The charter, the charter.
The independent charter.
Right.
That was my question.
Yes, the answer to that question.
Can I just add that?
Councilman Carlson.
It has to include, January 4th, also the summary ballot language. There was obvious bias in the last ballot.
That's why I asked.
It's not just the language itself, it's the summary that's on the ballot, because there was some bias built into that.
Yep.
So can you make that note, Mr. Shelby, so we make sure that that's covered?
Summary ballot.
Language.
Summary ballot.
Okay. That's a good
Well,
point.
and
It
it was also the English and the Spanish versions.
Well, what's happening
Yeah.
now, or now what's happening is your timeline,
that.
yes, your timeline is sufficient that it gives enough time for it to be in advance of the deadline for the supervisor of the levy.
Yeah, I heard, that they were able to translate that for us. We're not
Okay.
gonna be responsible.
So we
They still bill you for it, but at least then they're doing it.
No, thank you, because that was an issue. Oh, I see, December 3rd, okay, got it.
So that was part of our vacuum, right, the deadlines, trying to get on, Councilman Miranda,
Being a Scrooge, who's gonna pay for the attorney? Our budget or their budget?
we have a budget for it.
Okay, sure.
And when we budgeted for this, we worked with Mr. Besky to ensure that we had adequate funds. And now the way this was written by the past Charter Review Commission, if there's an obligation that we have the funds to be able to fund this process. So, yeah. So it's out there. So, okay, so we resolved that issue. The next thing is, we have in there that we shall present the mayor ordinance passed by a majority of 2/3.
Wait a second, hold on a second. Is everything else up until that point fine? I just want to be clear on that. I'm sorry. Okay,
So I think it should be done by, what do you think, majority or 2/3? I say majority,
I say majority as well.
majority.
Majority is 2/3, isn't it?
Well, no, majority is 50% plus one. So if you have a 10-person, but 6 people is a majority,
Where are we?
up in the section C.
Oh, we're back to this. I'm sorry, I was still on the timeline.
Oh, sorry.
Are
So,
we done with the timeline?
unless there's an objection to it,
I just, whatever it is, do it. So we have unanimously set on the timeline.
with the changes that have been suggested.
So I say each proposal has to be passed by majority rules.
Yes.
Yes.
May I, Mr. Chair, on that?
Councilman Bureau.
How many folks are gonna be on this committee?
9. So that'd be 5.
Yeah, so 5.
5,
Yeah, that's fair, that's.
We got a lot of jobs.
Yeah, we really did.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, so we'll.
And that was taken into account, because I heard those stories.
So we'll get more suggestions, but we will, I think that when it comes to council, we should have to pass it by 2/3.
I agree with that.
Because then a mayoral veto does not matter.
I can't say it's very one way or the other.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair, that's a good point. So majority on the board, and
How do you, if you don't get 2/3, what do you see this, how do you see this happen?
they are advising, they're suggesting to us, and we're the final say before it gets to the ballot, so.
Okay, say, but what if this? Let's say we can get majority, but we can't get 2/3, what happens?
That was highest.
Then it
It
would.
doesn't go on the ballot, it doesn't go on the ballot.
You don't want to just give a majority and send it to the mayor? And then it comes back to 2/3.
I mean,
You lose time.
yeah, we
But
do.
okay, you lose time or dies.
Well, if you lose enough time, it'll die.
But I'm saying, you already got a 2/3 built in. Because it goes, if we pass it with 50%, it goes to the mayor. If she vetoes it, it has to come back, it's still gotta get
And
2/3.
then what happens is you'll lose tweaks.
But we're gonna lose, it's gonna die anyways, what difference does it make? It's like 2/3.
Why can't it die up front? Because what happens, I think, what Mr. Miranda is saying is, it's a signal to the mayor that you already have enough votes to survive a veto.
I mean, if that's everybody's comfortable with that, so I'm just talking it out.
Because here's the thing, we had 18 amendments. That was a lot. Granted, we haven't reviewed the charter in 40 years, but we can't have 30 amendments. Like, they need to be,
They may reinvent the government.
but if they do reinvent the government, I think that we have to be the ones that put those guardrails. I mean, that's what we're doing. So I think 2/3 getting past us, because Marty's point is is a good one. We have had issues when we put stuff on the last ballot. This city council put amendments on, and one of them, I think the mayor vetoed a couple of them, and it took forever to get through. That was an issue.
Okay. So 2/3.
Yeah, what are the elected body?
Is there anybody that objects to 2/3 coming from the first round of council?
So a majority from our appointees, 2/3 from the council.
It offers a multiple layer protection.
Okay, that sounds good.
Question for, maybe the legal department knows this. I know we're thinking way ahead. I put in parentheses, May 1st of 2027, but that's Saturday. Do you swear in people on Saturdays?
I'm sorry, Andrea Sullivan.
Hi.
We did look into this and we were able to find that the last time May first was a Saturday, was like in the 90s, and we tried to find out whether the clerk actually swore the person in that date. We found they did. I think, Adam, you were asking me about it. Do you remember? I answered the question.
And I think it was on the.
Yeah.
Reason why we couldn't.
A Saturday's a fine day.
Yeah.
I just want clarification because I would put it in writing. I just want to make it correct. If I could.
I mean, May first is our date, right?
Yeah, then I don't really think we should just.
And the charter says May first.
Yeah. So let's go with May first and let's
Okay,
do
that's-
everything wrong.
You got it.
So the next point is
Appointments of the
city of, yeah. So are our members required to be, residents of the city of Tampa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who objects to that?
Well, no, that's required because
Yeah.
it's section
It's in the
1010.
charter.
Then why did you leave that as an option?
What I said.
Wait, don't ask me questions I can't
What
answer.
did I ask?
You had an are or are not.
What's the whole sentence?
No, regard to them in the district.
Oh, it's district, right, district.
I say yes.
Are they,
Qualification?
A?
No, for A.
A.
Under appointment.
Okay.
So are they required to reside in the district, the council member nominates them?
Yes.
I mean, if I may, on that, I mean,
Yeah.
we have 3 citywide, so I mean,
Yeah.
They don't vote.
We're covered.
Yeah,
So-
pretty much we're covered.
so y'all can just do anywhere in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I say yes as well.
It makes it equal.
you know, I'm fine, I mean,
Equal representation.
my person is District 7, but yeah, I'm fine with that. That's fine.
I actually think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, so they are required.
This idea was that.
No,
That was a
no,
good
it's
idea.
not. It's not my idea.
Oh, well, then
But
it's a
here's-
good idea.
But, okay, well, the concern is that, and this is the question of disparity of treatment of single members, single district members versus at large.
It's
And you
inherent.
have the ability.
It's inherent.
It's inherent.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what happens is the people who are limited geographically would not be to the city limits, would be the members of, the single district.
But if a single member district don't appoint somebody in their district, that means that you have, you could.
You don't have
a major void, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And that's fine. I just wanted direction. So what is the
Okay.
consensus?
Are
Without objection?
Yeah.
Okay, moving. So the city, council and mayor shall appoint individuals to serve as first and second alternate respectively. City council shall select its alternate by nomination and majority vote.
Let me stop you if I can. That's the, I'll explain what that purpose
I can
says.
skip it.
And if you look at if you look at the 2017 ordinance, city council.
What section? Can you please tell us where?
2020. Section
Three.
3B on page 2, city council shall appoint 2 additional individuals to serve as first and second members. That is what was in 2017. What the charter, what the voters adopted is that the city council appoints 1 alternate and the mayor appoints a second, the second alternate. And the question has been raised that if it is the mayor's appointment who resigns, who gets appointed to that position? Would it be somebody who the mayor selected as the alternate, or would it be alternate 1 versus alternate 2?
The mayor would have to fill in that blank. You know, if the mayor's alternate appointee resigns, the mayor should have the opportunity to fill in that gap.
Well, that alternate would already be there.
Yeah, but then you're missing 1 person. You probably.
They have to refill that space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let the mayor refill.
but I think that would work for council as well.
So
I
then-
don't have a problem with
Yeah,
that.
what he's saying is that the mayor's alternate would only fill one of the mayor's 2 seats.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And the city council would fill with the
Yes.
city council alternate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll craft that so that reflects that goal.
I think that's actually a really nice way of putting it.
Last time, did 2 of you come from alternates?
Yes, but the problem was we didn't refill the alternates. We filled 1 more. We only had 1, and that was Joe. And but we didn't have a second alternate, so if anything had happened, we would have been really out of it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
While you were gone, we dissolved the city government.
Yeah, come on.
It's an anarchy. That's okay, I'm in charge here. No. Okay.
the consensus I heard was that the mayoral alternate will be used to fill a mayoral vacancy, and a city council alternate would be used to fill a city council vacancy.
So the ballot doesn't
So the
change.
ballot doesn't change.
That's fair.
And then if we fill an alternate, you want to put something in that we would create another alternate?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we do, we will need to, both the mayor and the council would have to backfill, because that was, we were saying that was a deficiency in the last.
Well, especially because we're gonna talk about absence issues, so we're gonna talk about that a bit too, which I think.
Oh, yes, yeah, I really want to put some rules around that.
What's that? I missed it.
The absence, yeah. Remember my proposal, we can't just want to.
Okay, yeah.
Financial, but you have to have, continuity.
Yep.
And discussion.
Okay, now, the other thing is, this is from the original language, I believe, the designated first. I should call it mayoral city council instead of first and second,
Yes, you should.
right? So we should do mayoral city council. We'll change that. Okay, shall meet all attendance requirements in order to be knowledgeable on the issue before the CRC.
Where did you come to?
I'm still on the appointments and compositions B. And by the way, these won't be just titles, they'll have numbers next to them,
Yeah.
sections. I apologize for that, I couldn't format it with me. However, during their tenure as alternates, the alternates shall not have any vote on the CRC nor be actively involved in those deliberations. That's from the original.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm fine with that section. If anybody else has anything.
The next one is residency.
Yeah.
I don't think there's an issue with that. Does anybody have an issue with that?
No, I do like your additions for at least 1 year prior, I like that.
And that comes from.
I know, but you had it in parentheses, so I assume you wanted to talk about it.
I have a question on B.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Mr. Chavez says no member of the state legislature or member of the city council or employee of the city of Tampa. And then it says here, as defined with the city of Tampa code of ethics. That's what it could say, former employee, are they held to the standard of like the lobbyist started the 2 years and all that?
It's 6 years.
It's 6 years. And this applies to a former city of Tampa employee or not be able to be appointed.
Well, I don't know whether this is council's decision for qualifications for membership. That language, by the way, that I said, no member of the state legislature, that in parentheses B, the qualifications came from the 2017.
Yeah, I don't think that, because this is defining relative, I don't necessarily know, we have to expand the scope of this to exclude what you just described, former employee. I don't think this language includes former employee.
I think that, the issue with the ethics and the ethics rules say yours to your private gain or loss, but it wouldn't, if it's a former employee, adapting the charter most likely wouldn't. If they were working for a consulting firm or something, then maybe, but.
Do you want to have this council want to have a position for employees being eligible for this?
I would say that would be fine. I mean, I could see, a legislative staff, a legislative staff one.
Yeah, former legislative aide, not a former mayor, nothing like that.
But I mean, that would be this.
Well, could a former mayor be appointed under this
I think
definition?
if somebody wanted to appoint. them.
You're not going to. I mean, but if I may, let's
Yeah.
talk about whether popes could be appointed. I mean, look, if they're a former city of Tampa employee, who cares? They can work.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, that's true.
So we have a consensus that former employees can. So this language is intended to cover just as defined and as, say, the relative. Okay.
C, on page 2, it's a policy statement with regard to Form 1, statement of financial interest. I want the board and the public to hear that prior to appointments, all members of the CRC shall have completed an application for appointment. Even if it's your appointee, so has to complete the application, and have completed a background check, which is required of all city appointees, or city appointees. And in parentheses, I put it in because I want this discussed, or direction, and has filed Form 1, which is the statement of financial interest.
Shown as the short one.
Yeah,
That's an
With the office of city clerk along with the completed application.
Yes.
yeah, I think that's important.
So without objection.
It's a very, I mean, we did that, we had to do that on the variance review board and other boards. We're not, that's.
It's transparency.
Please take just 2 minutes to read D through H, just to make sure whether that meets with your, oh, yes, F is the attendance requirement, so we'll get to that.
Yeah, so we decided that 2 meetings, because again, continuity. If you cannot miss, they can miss two, and after two, if they miss another, they're gone.
If I may,
That's
question, for the alternates, correct, and maybe a Councilwoman Hurtak or Councilman Carlson, can opine on this, do they have to attend the meetings?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
think so, because you have the continuity.
They have to be
Yeah,
able
ready.
to fill in.
It's,
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah.
it's stated on page one.
Yeah, but they
Appointment
give-
proposition, letter B.
No, but they should be given, and this, I don't know how we're gonna put this in there, but they should have copies of everything everybody else gets a copy of. So the big binder, they get.
Like an alternate juror. Like an alternate juror.
Yes, it's basically an alternate juror.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Council Carlson.
Marty, on E, I think you ought to add in that language about where the alternate comes from, which alternate would replace what. City
Okay.
council, is that where it goes?
Okay, they all run.
And then the other thing, we're talking about code of ethics and financial, is this the section that has, they're subject to, sunshine and records?
It is,
I said that's under.
I think that's under duties.
it's under duties.
I know it's
And
under.
it's 5A on the duties on page 2.
Let's
So,
go back to G.
so we're good, we're good with two meetings, right? Now, Marty wants you to just look, there's not really changes for GNH, is there anything you should there?
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Okay, so we're good, so moving down, the terms of members, there's the two. Why do we have that twice? Why do you have that twice, Marty?
That's a good question.
Okay, so let's.
Let's take it out of terms of members and leave it in qualifications.
You got it.
Okay, deal.
The D is out.
Okay. So the duties of the Charter Review Commission. We discussed the sunshine and all of that good stuff.
Now, I do have a question. Before, and because we get into this with our CACs and the CRA, is we can't just say sunshine. I think there needs to be during the first meeting, it's actual,
That's in there.
it is.
Yes, you'll get to it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we decided that for again, with the lift on this, that they meet twice a month and more often at their discretion.
Yeah.
So twice is the minimum.
Yes.
This is the minimum,
Okay.
more often at their discretion.
Because they may, I mean, just gives them a lot more time. That was the thing we were, after a month, you kind of, you had to remind yourself.
So the language that's written here, it shall be more often as the discretion remains to.
If they choose to meet more often, they can be more often, but a minimum of twice per month.
I have a question if I may.
That's gonna be our-
For virtual attendance is not allowed up in Zoom, correct? Can we give, and how many meetings are there going to be roughly, do we know?
Twice a month from January until September.
So that's it, about 16 meetings, so in other words, we're allowing people to just miss two.
How about we?
Like happens. I was gonna say that either we allow one virtual as a grace, if that can be done, I don't know if we can, or alternatively do three, because stuff happens. When there's 16 meetings,
And
family,
application, you got summer, you got everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So three. I mean, I'm okay with that, if that's what you want to do.
I'm fine with that, just.
I think-
I was just worried about continuity.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's right, 16 meetings twice a month, that could be. So I understand, could we do 3 meetings, or do we say like one could be? Because, but I don't think virtual is a good idea.
How about three, but no more than two consecutive?
There you go.
Well, okay, it's six.
But then the alternative, excellent.
Then they're out, I mean, I know, it's terrible, but
But if you're sick for 6 weeks,
yeah.
You're missing so much of it.
yeah, but if you're sick for 6 weeks, then you have more on your plate. than-
I think 3 or so is a.
How about, so two, I'm sorry, you can miss 3 meetings, but no more than 2 consecutive.
So they miss, if I may, it's no more than 3, right? And then you may not miss more than 2 consecutive.
Consecutive, so that you can keep,
I think that's reasonable.
got that?
Because more than 3 would be.
Is everybody good with that?
Isn't that the same thing?
No, because
Yeah.
you can miss 2 and then a month later miss 1 more and still be on. But if you miss 3 in a row.
If you.
But that's the ones who be members in this thing.
Yeah,
I can sit in.
Anybody have any objection to that? Moving on,
Okay.
okay.
Yes, on, obviously, sunshine, public records. law.
Yeah. So we're past that now, so we're done with, we're on D.
D.
On page 3, the top of the page.
Okay, yeah.
He's the big one.
Yeah.
We've got direction on that. Let me tell you what the law requires. And you can work from there. The law requires that before they take final action on something, they have to give the public the opportunity to speak. Not the final action each day, final action, in other words, the recommendation.
That's fine.
But there's no requirement that you open a meeting with public comment. There's no legal requirement that you do that. There's no legal requirement that you end the meeting with public comment. So it's council's, if the council wants to involve itself or leave it up to the committee what it wants to do.
I mean, I think this is like a work group.
Yeah.
Council is the final action of the legislative body. While I think that the public comment needs to be an element of that, we're gonna do that via the public forums and the submissions. I would say that the public has the opportunity to sway the elected bodies to have the final say before we take action. Councilwoman Hurtak.
Completely disagree, because
I
that
knew
is,
you would.
it was a huge part, and we wanted to get participation. That's actually how we got the, some of the changes.
But aren't you getting that through the submission, through submissions?
Yeah, but I have,
You're gonna get more, because it's gonna be.
are, but just like us, there's nothing like showing up and making a public comment. And I also do not want anyone to come back to us and say, you stifled public involvement.
Exactly.
Well, they're all gonna be open.
Yeah.
What if we said
But what I'm saying, like-
one meeting a
Well,
month?
No, I think you do public comment at the beginning, and if they want to limit it to 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. But I still think, because as much as we want to believe, you're still not going to get 30 people showing up to these meetings. It's just not gonna happen.
Councilman Bureau, then Councilman Branch.
So I hear Councilman Hurtak's point is very well taken. One thing we do have to be aware of is that if an issue becomes political or whatever you want to call it, that we're expecting people to show up to 16 meetings. You have to be at 80% of them. And there is the chance that public comment could become an issue, and that folks have to extend the time to go away from work and families another hour. So we have to be careful with that. I am open to some level of public comment, limited to 15 minutes, for example. So that's all I care about. I'd love to have public comment in every meeting, but let's limit it to
That's fair.
15 minutes. Because again, we don't want to burden people.
Councilman Branch.
I was just gonna say the same in essence, what, Gary just said. These are volunteer, number one. 9 months, you can't only miss 2 consecutive or 3 total. You're not gonna get paid, you're not gonna do this, you're not gonna do that, and they're gonna give them a bunch of other things that they can't, how do you look at? So I mean, how many volunteers do you think we're gonna get?
The nerds.
Yeah,
How many?
the nerds.
Councilman Carlson.
We had the problem that in all of our meetings, only 1 or 2 meetings that very many people show up.
Yeah.
And that was because, the reason why they showed up is because some activists came in with it.
Well, we're gonna do a better job of advertising this time.
Yeah, and I think there are 2 other charter review members that sit in the audience, but I think the majority of us, even the mayor's appointees at the time, were in favor of public comment and letting the public speak, and there wasn't that much of it anyway. And the one day that we had a lot of people, it still didn't take very long.
We could let them make that decision on, I mean, we should allow for public comment 15 minutes, but if they wish to change the rules.
Yeah.
So a guideline 15, not written in stone, but a guideline 15.
At least it's there, no one can say, oh,
So do we have consensus that we can allow public comment before each one of these meetings?
out of 15 minutes.
Up to a maximum of 15 minutes, which can be changed by the.
Well, and that's gonna be, frankly, that's the kind of discussion that I think you should have with your facilitator. Because there's gonna be obviously an agenda that they have to accomplish, and what the concern is, and frankly, I've seen this, is the whole idea of allowing public comment can actually consume an entire hour and a half. I've watched it happen. Repeatedly.
That's the scary thing about this, because
And the thing is, they only have,
15 minutes.
Yeah.
15 minutes, we have a consensus on 15 minutes.
Yes.
Councilman Carlson.
One of the problems we had, I don't know if there's the facilitator controlled the whole thing, would not allow us to appoint a chair. And so there was nobody to bring a gavel or anything.
Yeah, we're talking about that. Do we have anything here about them having a chair? Let's have a look at a chair.
Yes, you want to talk about that? It's fine, it's in 588. You know what, you know where it is in 588? It's the strike, underlined in strike.
Okay.
If you take a look at exhibit A of 588, after the end, it's exactly what the
Because I know we talked about it.
page, it's after, it's the new page one of exhibit.
Oh, exhibit A at the end. Okay.
Exhibit A, if you look at the date. These were actually changes. Remember, this was done by resolution. And over the course of planning, the city council actually changed the resolution to be consistent, I believe, was what the committee actually, at some point, I have to go look and see where the
What?
timestamp. Pardon?
Exhibit A, what section?
Well, exhibit A would be, it looked like they changed the timelines. Where's the one I'm looking for? They, first of all, in section A, they required, initially they required Form 1, and section 4 on page 2 of exhibit A, they took that out. Then what happens is page 6, due to the Charter Review Commission, what they struck was the Charter Review Commission shall meet for the purpose of organization within 30 days after the plans have been made. The Charter Review Commission shall select from its own membership a chairperson to conduct the business of the meetings, and vice chairperson who will serve in the absence of the chairperson. That was the original.
Yeah,
ordinance.
I've got sentence
And
back.
now this is struck.
That's the committee. We need that.
Section 6, page 2.
I think the committee has to have a chair.
Yeah.
And chair of the town. So does anybody object to that?
Just that very sentence, the last sentence, the Charter Review Commission shall select from its own membership a chairperson and to conduct blah, blah, blah.
Now, that, okay, but let me share with you,
The facilitator is not a chair.
the facilitator is not a chair.
Facilitator is a facilitator.
Okay, because obviously I just want everybody to know that facilitator that council has, chosen, could not be here today. And I just want to make clear that I don't know what his position is with the way he wants to speak, but that's the decision of council. Okay, that's fine. So that language that is in section 6 originally, the exhibit will come back in. Okay?
Can I note on the same page, exhibit A, for last, this really got to be.
What's it saying?
Section what?
Exhibit A, for section 2, 11.
2.
It says reviewing whether city departments should report to council in the event of departure from anticipated expenditures.
Reviewing whether city department should report to council. on the
B11.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things we,
But I think the final one is what's on the second page.
I think that.
No, it's actually still on page 2. That was.
Oh, it is on page 2.
but that goes into the scope.
And I think that's, I mean, one of my proposals touched on that too, so I bet I have to go back and get that back, so.
I don't think we'll have a problem with the city attorney running that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Massey. One that emails, we'll send it out again. Allow this, one of it is allow city council, Tampa City Council to initiate amendments to Tampa City budget. So. Requires a vote by council for any bonding over $10 million. Allow Tampa City Council to hire staff and citizens fit to carry out the legislative duties. Remove language from the use of the powers on legislative matters. And
Is your idea?
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I think
all of this.
yeah, and Tampa City Council has the ability to remove director level staff at or above 5 or more votes. Council.
That for sure.
But just things that you live and learn after you've been sitting here for a while. So where are we at, Marty?
Let's see, I think council, I think we were getting there.
For E under duties of Charter Review.
CRC, made by majority vote establish rules. Okay. You have a problem with that?
Yeah.
Establish our rules.
Yep, we gotta have.
We already have that, we already have the dates. Okay, we've already coordinated with the clerk, that they're going to provide support staffs, that's already agreed to, we have a agreement.
I don't think we need to such as,
The housekeeping change issue,
yeah, I think we can just put a period after consideration.
For its consideration.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because they've already said they're gonna do it.
Does anybody have any issues with that? We have an agreement by motion, yes, okay, good.
And see, we change that to the chair, the city council chair.
Yeah,
Did I manage scope somewhere in there, and language to scope? You decide.
Yeah, how are we doing with that? Refresh my memory.
the
Generic-
Councilman
generic
Bronson
term.
has A, B, and C, he just,
Is that where we're inserting that? Yeah.
no, we're gonna have a separate section that's called scope
Right,
of work. And then,
and that's the three items.
yeah, that's the 3 items, including the date.
Yeah.
That everything needs to be back.
Yeah.
January 8th.
Well, the A, B, and C was the generic description of.
I've already got
And then
you.
number 2 was was reviewing what the recommendations of the city attorney. Number 3 was responding to any questions or suggestions to city council.
Sounds good.
Shelby, since you have the awesome task of encapsulate this into resolution, is there anything left from this council that you need?
Yes.
Bill, let's have Councilman heard there.
Will we get a draft of this?
Can we get like 24, 48 hours?
Yeah, that's what basically is my
Size on it.
question. Can we get some eyes on it?
We can get it on,
A couple of days.
we can get it on Friday.
Oh, we'll have it done by Friday. Okay.
That's what they.
Oh, to be on base. Okay, yeah, that's fine, never mind.
So Councilman Shelby, our council. Council-led shows floor.
Council Moore, I just wanted to point out, there was one other issue that I wanted to make sure I face with this. Yes, page 2, the term of office. Each member's term of office from a day of appointment by resolution to the committee's dissolution. Let me talk about the dissolution. The committee shall be dissolved, the commission shall be dissolved upon its final report being received and filed by the city council. Correct. Just as a backstop, I just put this in, if you tell me to take it out, I will, but it says the CRC shall be dissolved automatically if no amendments or revisions are recommended to the city council by the submission deadline. And it operates, it disappears, if they even deliver, which I most likely think they do. What I don't want to have happen is that for whatever reason, it goes, so I put that in there.
I think that's a good legal backstop.
Lessons learned.
Lessons learned. Anything else that you need to have? Do you feel like you have enough information from this council to do your duty?
Well, let me just share, my thanks to you for having this meeting and setting it and giving me the opportunity to attend my continuous meeting. But I will, with tomorrow being a city holiday, have the opportunity to get it to my, so it comes back to on base in a timely fashion. I'm also going to ask the city clerk to be able to put this information into on base as well that you received today that I emailed to you. And also that you have this time here together now. If there's anything related to this subject that you want to discuss publicly, that we haven't discussed, it's not in this, or this, that we have that discussion now. Otherwise, you'll have that opportunity when this draft comes back to you on the 20th.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
What's the date that we get to appoint our people?
Let's go back to the timeline.
There's a deadline. You could,
My suggestion is when you pass that resolution, you give them the application and you say submit this, because the sooner you complete this application and submit it, the background check will have to be completed before December 4th.
So can we do that this week? Or will the application not even be available until Thursday?
I don't know, I think it's the state using the standard application.
it would be standard.
So we could ask them to go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, what's nice about that is we could give them, after the resolution passes, all their obligations, because they have to know that there's going to be a background check. They have to know there's going to be a financial disclosure form. There's going to have to be an attendance requirement. So the person you ask, my suggestion, council, and I is to make sure that, you know, you have the informed consent that that's your candidate, that you don't have to have.
That's the process.
So we'll reach out.
Okay, if there's nothing else, you're gonna open up the public comment. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to discuss this in shocking?
Okay,
State your name.
Stephanie Poyer, I have some questions. One, if you're not communicating with, your appointee, and some of them don't go to city council a lot, how do you know that they're doing what you want them to do? We don't want to have the comp plan all over again. What about digital participation? Are you going to have these meetings, videotaped so that these folks, if they are not able to attend for whatever reason, sometimes you're sick and you don't want to make everybody else sick. I've seen that before. At least allow them to phone in, even if they're not allowed to participate, and give them half credit or something. I don't know. I think that's kind of crazy. 15 minutes worth of public comment. We all know that, is that going to be first come, first serve? How are you going to handle that? I don't know how that works. I'm real big on the meetings being recorded because sometimes we can't all sit here and watch these meetings, and we have people who in the city always watch everything from home. And I mean, there's more of them out there than you hear from on a regular basis. And last but not least, and I know this, we are not talking about individual things, but I really, really, really would like, I want it to be in the record, that I would like to see that if we lose somebody on council after the first 100 days, that we do it like we did it when Councilman Dane Helder resigned, because that process was quick, it was simple, we had representation back. This last showing was absolutely ridiculous, and I honestly believe, I mean, everybody knows that I love Councilwoman Hurtak, but the second runner-up, I would have been just as happy with her. I think that the council knows best about who's going to fit in and move forward at that point. And 4 months without, I mean, we wouldn't do without a mayor for 4 months. We wouldn't do without any other positions in the city for 4 months. And these political positions, I think that we just, for the first 100 days, yes, because we still have a new and fresh council. But after that, I think council needs to make the decision as to how it works. And it worked quite well. We had 23 applicants. We spent a day on it, and it was kind of wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. So, but I do like the idea for digital participation. I think these meetings should be recorded and be available to be seen. We have asked for this in the past, and I know Carol Ann has asked for videos of meetings and had a really, really difficult time getting them, not necessarily a council committee, but a other committee in the city. So making sure that those are available on YouTube is really important. Thank you.
Council Blues is not a mayor department, but the chairman would be the mayor meeting. Another councilman.
And then you gotta do that.
Council Girl.
I would ask the clerk and to make sure we upload this to YouTube, which is what we did at the last, we had in this room. And then the same thing.
I don't think we're going to arrangements to do that.
No, but you can take this file and upload it to YouTube. And then the same thing, it was just audio and they uploaded it, so it's dark. The other thing is for these other meetings, I assume they're going to at least record for the Charter Review Commission. They're at least going to record them an audio version. And the same thing, they can upload those to YouTube for
I think that is another decision point. Should you ask the chair to coordinate with the clerk and CCTV to do this?
Yes,
Is there consensus that people want these
Yes.
recorded and uploaded?
absolutely.
Sam?
Well, the question is, where would they be? Because we did it in council chambers, but I don't know that council chambers would be available.
Well, I mean, we could reserve this room. You have this technology with this.
Oh, that's right, yeah, this text.
You also have to have it.
Yeah,
Yeah, but is this technology compatible with YouTube? And what you're like, who can you capture?
Susan's not.
Yeah, we could download the file and work with the guides and have them.
Can they live stream off of this?
Maybe not through this particular platform, you'll have to get with CCTV.
Okay, so I'll take that as an assignment to coordinate with the CCTV to see if what is required and how nimble they could be. Councilman Green, did you want to say something?
Yes, sir. If the committee members get accommodation, I would ask that I motion.
We can say in perpetuity, regardless of what position you hold, you'll come back to council with all the accommodations.
I would ask that it be 9 separate.
There's that.
Non-consent agenda.
Without any time limits.
Yes,
See,
absolutely.
So even if it can't be live streamed, at least if we can put it on YouTube, that
Yeah.
provides a high level of transparency. Otherwise, you're still looking.
Can you capture that? Okay, is there anybody else from the public that wishes to speak? Any of the city staff that wishes to provide comment?
Sir, I want my full 3 hours.
Are you sure? Council, no, Stephanie, you can't get a second to go. Okay, well, is there anything else the council wants to add? Any other ideas, anything else?
Oh,
Can I just say, we don't have to talk about it now, but I circulated my questions. So whenever you set up for us to talk about it, everybody else can put theirs in.
I will resubmit the ones that I had submitted earlier.
So along those lines, if everybody does that and has their aides circulate, would Stan be willing to sit down and combine them? Because I have a feeling that if we each go ahead and put a bunch of them in,
You don't want them separated by council persons, they know who they came from.
Sunshine.
sure, but I'm just saying that,
Once they get sent, they're a public record and they're also engaged, so vote.
but
But
my
we're-
point, but my point is, if Alan says Tampa City Council to have the ability to remove a director level staff or above with 5 more votes of council, and Charlie says Tampa City Council will have the ability to remove a director level staff, period. Like that should be, those two should be like right after one another, you know what I mean? 'Cause
Or you're talking about.
yeah, I'm talking about organizing these thoughts. I think that Sam, as the chair's aide, can combine those.
I think I would send that to the facilitator to ask him to do that. Because then he
Well, so
gets-
the facilitator's not gonna be working then in January.
Facilitator, conceivably start working as soon as we sign.
Yeah, I mean, if it goes to a facilitator, but whatever, I think, I don't want to, I don't wanna show up to 7 different pieces of paper where there are slight variations on the same theme. I would like, at least like to have a theme,
So.
because otherwise we're never gonna be able to make.
That is, I think that sounds like job facilitator.
Okay, well then, if we can get the facilitator to come up with themes based on county and private.
Or Marty or so we can make that note so that when we're on the board.
So what is the?
Hager,
what is the
I'm
deadline?
never gonna get that right.
What is the deadline? What is the deadline before that again?
We said January 8th.
January 8th is the deadline for the compilation to have it on a council meeting. So that means it has to get to wherever it's going to get to before that.
That's my concern.
And we'll have to figure out a date. We have to make it.
We'll figure that out. Okay. Ms. Ellen,
I just had a quick question. One is, would council be willing, when you submit all your things, to copy our office?
That's fine.
And secondly, if we see something that might not be something that the CRC could do, for instance, Stephanie's request, Morris and I were just mumbling, I think that may require a change to the related laws in Part B to change the way in which a council member is replaced. In which case, we don't want the CRC to spend a lot of time, or maybe you do want them to spend a lot of time discussing that before we go to the legislature, I don't know, but if we see something where there's like an obvious legal issue, do you want us to weigh in ahead of time or just wait and let the process play out?
like I say, in conflict with state of Florida law.
So Part B of our charter is what we call related laws and
Right.
special acts of the legislature, and they're still in effect. So it's not part of the state statutes, as you know them, but yes, it is state law. So we would have to get our delegation to change that. I believe. We're gonna double check. on
Okay, yeah, that.
So that's what, but I guess my question is, if we catch something like that, would you like us to go ahead and tell you this?
I think we need to be drawing our attention to be able to evaluate it for sure. Yeah.
I think Bill had his hand up, go
Go ahead.
I think that it ought to be directed at us and then we can decide whether to
I agree, that's something that should be brought to our attention.
Not that these folks will do it, but there was so much bias the last time where things were implied that weren't true. Like when you were challenging the strong mayor form agreement, it doesn't say strong mayor anywhere in the charter. And it's implied, and so because you're trying to balance the powers or clarify the powers, doesn't mean you're trying to change some hypothetical thing that's not even law. So we need to make sure that it's strictly sticking to violation of state law, that it's not applied to try to discourage us from getting something done.
But there, I mean, it's not a violation of state law to change the form of government, is it?
No, but, yeah, yeah, it would be handy if we could see it before we put those
Yeah, yeah,
communications.
so I would suggest, in fact, I would encourage, so if city staff gets this information and they find that there's conflict,
Reach out to that.
I would say submit it to council so that we can address that and then submit that to the charter review commission. I think that's a good flow of information. Does everybody agree with that interpretation?
If I could just make an observation, because this point we talked about the time of the loss of Councilwoman Henderson to the time that Councilwoman Young took office. I remember, Charlie certainly does, and a lot of us do, remember when everybody was sworn in on April 1st. And we had to change that to May 1st because of the whole process now with election laws and election requirements have drawn out the process.
Yeah.
So at the time in 1974 or 75, the time was shorter and has grown over time. That may make a difference in how you feel it and how effective, how you want to address it.
Yeah, can I just say, as we're reviewing or somebody's vetting these questions that we put in, or as we're looking at the law, the nuance counts, the meaning of certain words counts, and I mentioned the ballot title of the charter, last charter amendment that the mayor proposed, and hopefully this is the right text, but I pulled it online. This is what the text, the summary said, the title, shall the amendment to section 6.01 of the Tampa Charter revising the residency requirements of the officers of the city who conduct the government to apply only to elected officials as set out and proposed by the city of Tampa ordinance, blah, blah, blah. The point here is that what it really did is it excluded the mayor's senior staff. But the way it's written is written so that it implies that it only affects the elected officials. And so the point, the nuance of the law is really important. If we had done exit polls and asked people, do you think you were voting to have restrictions for city council or to loosen the restrictions for department heads, people would not have understood that they were loosening restrictions.
Or the matter.
Council, right now, not take for another stuff, but yes and no, people like to vote positive, not negative. So whatever the yes is, they're gonna vote for. And alphabetically and politically, if you have a last name started with an A, you're gonna get 3 or 4% of the votes, whether you show up or not. Because they're gonna vote for the first one. That's a game goes on.
Longer names.
And along with us has to do with, we had to go through the young lady sitting in front of us, council member here. And that's the people's choice. It shouldn't be my choice. It should be the people's choice in that district or in that city. If you're citywide to vote. I'm not going to restrict anybody from this council to say, hey, I'm going to choose this next council member. No, my feeling is we live in America. Constitutionally, it's up to the people to select or vote for whoever they want. Not me to make that decision. I have to do it the way it is because that's the way it is. But I don't like that way.
Any other business before we adjourn this meeting? Hearing no other business, this workshop is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're not